Hello, everyone, and welcome to End of Life University podcast, where we share real talk about life and death. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wyatt, and I'm glad you're joining me today. This is episode number 245, and in a few moments, I'll be sharing with you a conversation I had with Noha Waibsnaider, who's the founder and CEO of Gathering Us, a platform for virtual funerals and memorials. And we'll be talking all about that, how to have a virtual funeral, which has become a necessity over the last few months as we're dealing with isolation and social distancing due to the coronavirus pandemic. So that interview will be coming up in just a few minutes. I wanted to first share a few announcements. I'd like to thank my latest supporter on Patreon, Alan Leon. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining the team and making a monthly contribution to help keep the podcast on the air. Anyone else who's interested in learning more about that can go to my page at Patreon, patreon.com/EOLU. And you'll learn all about how to sign up and become a supporter. So thank you again, Alan, and also all of the other supporters who've been helping me out for the last few years. I really appreciate it. I also wanted to mention another time that my book, 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, is available still for pre-order, but it's going to be on sale at last within a week or so from now on May 12th. And so you can go to the Amazon page and pre-order it right now if you're interested. Again, it's only available as an ebook for now, simply because the printers are not working at this time due to the pandemic. But as soon as they're back in force, the print version will be available and will be shipped out to people. So I'll have a link for that in the show notes for this episode at eolupodcast.com, episode 245, and you'll see a link. You can go directly to Amazon there. I also wanted to mention that I've been doing some interviews lately, which has been a lot of fun. I was featured on Teresa Chung's podcast, White Shores. She is an award-winning spiritual author from the UK who has a very popular podcast, and I really loved my conversation with her, and that I'll put a link to that in the show notes also if you're interested in listening. And then I was on a Light in the Dark podcast hosted by Egan Orion, and that was another really beautiful conversation. He also spoke with a birth doula during that episode. So again, there'll be a link for that as well if you'd like to listen. So stay tuned after this conversation with Noha Waibsnaider, because I'll be coming back with a little extra content I want to give today. I want to talk a little bit about handling our personal, private grief in the midst of such devastating and huge communal grief that we're experiencing as well. So I'll be talking a little bit about that after this interview. So as always, stay tuned after the conversation ends. So here we go, without further ado, my conversation about virtual funerals and memorials. Today, I'm so happy to welcome my guest, Noha Waibsnaider, who is the co-founder and CEO of Gathering Us, the place where communities gather virtually after the death of a loved one to support each other and celebrate their life, which is so important today as most of us around the world are still under stay-at-home orders due to COVID-19. Gathering Us enables families and friends to gather at virtual events, share stories and photos, fundraise to help the family with expenses, and donate to a nonprofit charity. So we'll be learning all about Gathering Us today, and you can go to the website gatheringus.com if you're interested in more information. So Noha, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today.
Hi, Karen. It's so nice to be here with you.
Well, I was very interested to hear about the services that you're offering, and curious in the first place to know, how did you get interested in helping people with memorials and funerals?
Yeah. So Gathering Us came out of my personal experience in that over the last couple of decades, we faced a lot of death in our family. My husband has a large Irish family, and when you have a lot of people in the family, you also have a lot of death. And we became the people who organized and hosted and planned all of the funerals. And what I realized is that it's a very challenging time with a huge learning curve, a ton of decisions to make, and so many people who want to be there and want to be supportive, and oftentimes aren't sure what to do or what to say. They don't want to be intrusive. And they want to show up. And so I wanted to create a space that would enable everyone to come together to support each other and to be able to celebrate the life of their loved one together. So I started working on Gathering Us about 2.5 years ago, and we launched a year and a half ago.
It seems very prescient right now, the place we're at right now, that you had this idea to start it in the past, probably never anticipating how much it would be needed in 2020.
Absolutely. Definitely the last couple of months and coronavirus has changed so many things. And although there was so much need for Gathering Us beforehand, now it is absolutely so much more. And so when we started, the original platform, it's a memorial site where everyone can gather. They can share stories and memories and photos. They can RSVP to events. They can make donations to support the family or create a college fund for kids and support different charities and meaningful causes that are personal and unique to that person. One of the things that became really obvious to me early on is that a lot of people can't show up in person. We have family in different countries, and oftentimes they couldn't fly to be here with us, and especially on a short notice. And we realized that we needed a solution for all of the people who were not going to be physically present. Over a year ago, we started putting that on our product roadmap, but didn't really prioritize it for a while until the last few months when we realized that now it's really urgent and very critical for people to have a solution. So our product manager, who has been with us for over a year and a half, previously has a lot of experience in virtual gatherings and virtual events. She actually organized trainings and brought people, converted events from offline events to virtual events. And so she brought a lot of vision and experience in how to make it something that is truly participatory and interactive and not just a one-way live stream.
You know, it's so interesting because personally, I don't think I could have imagined how a virtual funeral might work or a virtual memorial service until the last couple of months due to COVID-19, when everything I've done, all my connections with people and communications have taken place virtually. And suddenly it's as if it really has opened up a whole new world. And I'm now beginning to see the possibilities for it. And the fact that you really can feel closeness with other people, even though you're physically very far apart.
For sure. And that's something that we're seeing all around. When we started a couple of months ago, definitely people were much more skeptical and questioning of it. And now that people are starting to have a lot more experience with virtual and conferencing, it's become a much more clear, given way that people are doing things and how they interact. One of the things that I have personally seen is that there are some things that you can do with the technology that you can't do in a regular funeral. For me, the one that's most striking is that in a regular funeral, everybody is seated in rows. And so most of what you see is people's backs. But in a virtual funeral, everyone is facing each other. And so you see everyone's faces, and it's incredibly powerful to see everybody else going through this deeply meaningful and emotional experience with you.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that, but you're so right. When we're in a physical space together at a funeral, we're so much in our encapsulated in our own bubble in a way. And I can see that you could even feel more connected to the people you're sharing it with because of that face to face sharing.
For sure, for sure.
Noah, would you walk us through what might a virtual funeral look like? Just could you describe that for us to get an image of how it might proceed and what it might consist of?
Sure. Oftentimes, we'll start, and actually, the event starts a lot earlier than what most of the guests see. For us, the event planning process is really key. We spend a lot of time with the families working through something that is very personal and that is a real tribute to the person that they are honoring and celebrating. And so we come up with a custom program. We also do a walkthrough the day before with all of the speakers or performers and people who are going to be involved to make sure that everybody knows their role and that all of their technology is working and the audio visual is working. And then we also have them log in before the event, about a half an hour before, to make sure that it all comes together and they can hear and they can see, and we can hear and see them as well. Then once the event starts, as guests are coming in about 15 minutes beforehand, we usually play some music that they select with a slide that shows the program and instructions as people are logging in. If there's any technical difficulties, then we can help walk them through that. Once we begin the program, our facilitator will come on and provide instructions for everyone as to what is happening in the service and the program, the general order of events. Sometimes there will be a clergy member or a celebrant or an officiant that the family is working with, in which case they will likely be one of the first speakers. There's usually a eulogy from either that celebrant or a family member, and usually lots of or a few different speakers from the family. We can do a custom slideshow with photos that the family will send and custom music that they choose, and that sometimes will go early in the program or at the end of the program. What we really try to encourage is to do something that is personal, and a few examples of that are, we had somebody do a toast with Twizzlers last week because the person really loved Twizzlers. And so they asked everybody to get Twizzlers in advance, and everybody ate their Twizzlers at the same time. We had a chef another time, and so they asked everybody to prepare a meal in advance. And we designated a certain part of the service for everybody to pull out their meal and eat together. So whatever is something that is special. Someone said they loved coffee, and so there was a coffee toast in there. Oftentimes it seems food, and that makes sense. Food is such a big part of our lives, and especially right now. But that is a way that we can bring people together. We had some people ask for everyone to wear the color orange because the person loved the color orange. And so different ways that we can commemorate people and remember them and do things with some planning from the guests themselves as well, right? So that they feel that they are bringing something to this event and they are participating as well.
Wow, I love the creativity, and it's really fascinating to me. You know, they say necessity is the mother of invention, but that going through this trying time and when getting together face to face is so difficult, it's amazing the ideas that people come up with that go beyond what I've seen oftentimes at just your everyday traditional funeral. So that's really touching to me to hear all of those, all the ways people have personalized these events.
For sure. It is really beautiful. And the events are truly very moving. The other thing that we've done to enable everyone to participate and to make make it really interactive. If you think about it, you can't have 200 people, open up everybody's microphones and have everyone talk at once. So throughout the event and the ceremony, there's a very clear program, and we highlight the people in mute and unmute, and we control all of the settings and all of the microphones during the event. And then typically at the end, we do two things. One is we can open it up for a sharing or toast or different speakers, and we'll ask guests to either raise their hand or write in the chat, so that letting us know that they want to speak. And so we will unmute them. And then the second way that we've done it for larger events is what we call our reception rooms. If you think about a reception in normal times, where you might have different tables of 5 or 6 people at each one, and the family may hop around from table to table and visit with different people. And maybe you have the coworkers table, the kids table, the school friends, the mom's friend from Indiana, all the different groups of people. So what we do is essentially different conferences where different people can self-select which one of those rooms they want to go to, and the family can hop in and out of them and visit with those people in smaller groups where they can have a real interactive conversation.
Oh, I just love that idea. I never would have thought of that, but definitely these virtual platforms make it possible to separate into smaller groups like that. And so that seems very innovative, but also so meaningful, because you might be connecting with people that you haven't seen for years who are part of this funeral and have this opportunity to just share together at the very end.
Exactly. And so it really provides an opportunity partly for the family to have one-on-one time or 5, in smaller groups with all of the different people. But it also provides an opportunity for all of the guests to interact with each other and with the people that they are closest to at this event. And oftentimes it is kind of a reunion for a lot of people, for, whether it's family. A lot of what we hear during the events is, oh, this is just like a family reunion. We should do this more. Let's do this again. So it definitely has that feeling.
And I'm thinking back, through my life, there have been some important funerals, funerals that mattered to me, that I ended up missing for one reason or another, not being able to get there in time. And I still carry some pain from that, from not having been part of those funerals. And to think that this virtual platform really opens it up for everyone to be there who wants to be there, but for any reason can't travel and can't come in person.
Exactly. And, obviously right now, none of us can get there in person. But even after Corona, over time, to your point, there are so many events that we would all want to be there at that we can't necessarily be there physically. And so I think virtual funerals will be a part of ongoing regular in-person funerals in the future, because it really does open up the community in such a way. It enables so many more people to show up and to support each other.
Yeah, and I guess that is one of the blessings that a lot of people are discovering is the value of virtual platforms in staying connected with other people. And I was thinking of how people have really been hit hard by COVID-19 and the isolation it has required, even throughout the dying process and the death of their loved ones, and not being able to be with them. But knowing that at least they can come together with all the other mourners and everyone else who loves and cares about the person who has died, I would think that brings a great deal of consolation to them.
For sure. It really does. I was actually just looking on my email. I would love to read to you one of the emails we received from someone. Is that okay?
Oh, yes, please do.
Let me just find it. I just wanted to reach out and express my deep gratitude. I was unsure what to expect from a virtual celebration of life, if it would feel connected and like a gathering. What I experienced on Sunday was such an incredible sense of connection and communal celebration of Dominic. It was so incredibly helpful and healing, and I want to thank you for the support and forum for us to be able to have had this gathering. Especially for the number of attendees, it was incredibly smooth and allowed us to really focus on what the purpose of the gathering was rather than the technical details. I have had multiple people reach out and express that this was the most affecting and connected experience they had with any memorial. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for creating the platform and managing the flow so we could honor Dominic so fully and all together.
Wow, that's really beautiful and touching.
Yeah. And I think really very much expresses so much of what we are hoping to help people with. And we feel very honored that when we achieve it.
Yes. And I wanted to say, as a podcaster, I listen to lots of podcasts myself. And I've been hearing on almost everything I listen to, people are talking about having attended a virtual funeral and how meaningful it was to them. And many people have expressed the same thing, that it was the most powerful memorial service or funeral they've ever been part of. And I think it's incredible that this platform has arisen at this time when we most need it, when we desperately need these ways of being connected. So I'm so grateful that you've created Gathering Us, and that, I mean, I know there are other means of getting together too, but it seems like you've made it much easier for people to do it by handling all the technology for it.
Yeah. And you know what, that's a really good point, that in general, when you're planning a funeral, most people only do it a couple of times in their lives. And so there's a huge learning curve, even in normal times, as to what to do and thinking through what it should look like and what to do now. And we used to have more religious frameworks, and people nowadays aren't quite as religious. And so they don't have that as a template or a guide. And so in addition to having to figure out what do our new routines look like or our new plans look like, they also have to figure out how do I translate that into a virtual funeral and a virtual event. And so the fact that we can help them through that entire process is very significant. But also, I think that the virtual piece is giving people leeway and room to do something that is much more creative than they might have done previously. And so, in fact, I think part of why people are feeling more connected and are having very positive associations and positive experiences with virtual funerals is because the organizers and the families are actually able to do things that are more creative than they might have done at other times.
Yes, I was thinking of that. I mean, I can't imagine going to a traditional funeral and having everyone wear orange, or everyone eating Twizzlers. And so
exactly.
It's really a lovely touch. And I can see these would be totally unique events.
Yeah, they really are. Every single one of them is completely different.
Just one question that occurred to me. Do you record the gathering so families can have it later to review? Or
yes, we do record them, and then we post them on their memorials on Gathering Us.
Oh, so if someone can't even attend the virtual celebration or memorial, they can go back and view it later.
Exactly.
And so tell me again a little bit more about the memorials page, because does everyone who has the virtual funeral also have a memorial page, or are they totally separate?
Most people do, and we definitely encourage them to, because that's a good place for us to be able to share the virtual gathering recording on the memorial. The memorials are really useful as an ongoing repository. And I think this is also an important thing for everyone to keep in mind about funerals and about death in general, is that the family who's going through this process, the funeral is really just the beginning of their grief process, which goes on for a long time. And they continue to need support and to need their community to show up for them over time. And one of the things that we try to encourage is going back to that memorial and sharing photos and sharing stories over time and continuing to check in with the family and the people who are close to the person over time, because they need that help and they need that support, and now more than any other time in the past. So we see it as something that is very much ongoing and an evolving space where the community can continue to gather.
And so can anyone, say, post stories or photos on the memorial page, or is it only for family members to post on?
Anybody can post. They do have to register and they do have to conform to our policies. So we do check that, and we have strict guidance on what people can post.
I was thinking of how nice that would be, just remembering loved ones of mine who've died, and I have a particular history with them, and I know the stories I know, and I know them as the person they've been to me in my life, and how enlightening it is when you meet someone's friends from other parts of their lives and realize they did all sorts of things that I never knew about. And I could imagine this page as being just filled with interesting photos and stories that the family could go on reading and learning even more about their loved one than they might have heard before.
For sure. I certainly have found that at funerals, I learned so much about people and so many multifaceted things about their lives that I never knew. And that is one of the most meaningful aspects of having that kind of gathering. And we definitely see both in the events themselves and on the memorials, when people are sharing, and the diversity of what they share and perspective that they bring to the table. And it really does make such a huge impact for people to have those memories and more memories being shared over time.
Yes, I can definitely see that. Well, I'm sure, are you finding that you're a little bit overwhelmed right now with requests, since everyone really needs this virtual service at this time?
We are definitely busy. We're getting a lot of inbound calls and emails. We are ramping up our team to make sure that we can help as many people as possible, and in a way that is truly helpful and meaningful. So for sure, it is an extremely busy time, and we are trying to make sure that we are there for everybody.
Can I ask, are you looking to hire people to who might be able to assist on your team?
We are hiring, yes. So people who are comfortable with the topic of death and who are very empathetic and can really help support and guide families through this process.
Mm-hmm. Because I was thinking I know that there are some death doulas out there, and also some hospice workers, social workers and chaplains in particular are much more limited in the number of visits they can do to patients. And so there might be people out there who would love to help and love to be involved in the work in some way. So I just thought I might mention that if someone says, "Oh, I'd love to be part of that," and at least for the next few months, I'd love to help out if I could.
Exactly, for sure, definitely. If you know people who are a good fit, we are definitely interested, and also need to be fast learners with technology in particular, because we do use a lot of different technology for our events and internally and for supporting families. So yeah, definitely.
Well, that's good to know. And I mean, it would be wonderful to see your capacity grow, because there's such a huge need for it. And it's such a wonderful service that you're offering.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure a couple of years ago, you could not have envisioned what's happening today. Well, none of us could envision this, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even 2 months ago, I don't think I could have envisioned how this has, yeah, well, yeah.
Well, I did notice, I noticed on your website a number of testimonials from people, and it definitely seems that they're all saying the same thing, that this has been very meaningful and they're so grateful. So I know that you're providing a tremendous service right now, and I really want to thank you for that. It actually helps me as I find myself sitting in my own home kind of grieving on behalf of all the people out there who have had loved ones die and all of the pain they're going through, because everything about that process has changed now. And for me to hear stories about what you're offering and to know people have a way to gather virtually, it actually really helps me feel like there's still good things happening. We're still able to come together in love. And that gives me peace to know that.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And yeah, I agree. I do. I find when I read articles about mourning these days, there's been a lot of press coverage about how people can't come together to have funerals, and they're usually the articles are very distressing. And so obviously having witnessed many virtual funerals that are very moving and powerful and lovely, I want to make sure that people know that there really is a great way to do this. And, even if you don't have Gathering Us to support you in doing it, and, if you're able to do it technically and you have the personal resources and capacity to do it on your own, I think it can be done and be at times even better than a regular funeral. And we've actually heard people say, "Oh, I want to go back and redo, my mom's funeral virtually because this is so much nicer."
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been saying to people lately is to remember that love is not limited by time or distance. Love is universal. Love can transcend everything. And when we can gather together and to be able to look each other in the eye and see each other's faces, as you were describing, as we're going through this grieving process together, that's a tremendous blessing and a huge gift. And knowing that you can feel the love being transmitted back and forth between people, even when you're not in the same space.
For sure. And that's definitely one of the ways that we think about it, is this concept of the reflection back to you, because what transforms grief to mourning is the external expression of it, and having the reflection back at you of the enormity and the impact of what is happening is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just realized that I've seen some forms for helping people do their after death planning, planning what disposition they want to have and perhaps what kind of funeral they have. But I think we really need to expand that paperwork and our vision, as you were saying before, to include a virtual component, because it seems like this has been a revelation in a way that we can actually make that process even better by using technology.
Exactly.
Well, Noha, thank you so much again for creating this. And I guess I should ask, if someone listening wanted to start a memorial page or talk about a virtual gathering, how do they get in touch with you and your team?
Go to gatheringus.com and click on the links there.
All right. And then perhaps, I guess, if someone's interested in seeing if they would be a good fit for your team, that's a possibility too.
For sure. And they can email us at info@gatheringus.com. And we are definitely looking for people, and probably people who are your listeners.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm thinking of all the people out there working in hospice and working as death doulas, and some who are involved in direct patient care and helping families who need to know about this alternative, because they may be able to talk to families and give families the comfort of knowing that there is a way that you'll be able to gather and have a very meaningful ceremony. And I think people are going to be happy to know about Gathering Us and to be able to share that with others. So, and hopefully you will have all the staff you need to handle everything that comes your way.
Thank you. Thank you.
So remember, go to gatheringus.com. And I've been talking with Noha Waibsnaider. And Noha, I know that you live in Brooklyn, and I hope all is well for you there, for you and your family, and you're all safe and well.
Thank you. Yes, it feels better now than it was a couple of weeks ago. So we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Yes, I'm so glad to hear that. Well, blessings to you as you go forward with the work, and thank you again for talking to me today.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Noha Waibsnaider from Gathering Us. I was really happy to learn about the creativity that's possible with virtual funerals, and to hear that people are feeling very satisfied and gratified after hosting these virtual ceremonies together, and was excited to spread the news to anyone out there who might benefit from learning about it. And I also really like the idea of an online memorial page. Even when the pandemic is over and we can have traditional funerals again where we all gather in person, I think the online memorial page is a really nice thing to do, where friends and family members can keep posting photos and stories over time to help loved ones throughout the entire grief process that they're going through. So I love that idea also. I wanted to add on a little supplement today because a question has been coming up amongst some listeners who've been asking about, how do I deal with my own personal grief in the midst of all of this vast tsunami of communal grief that we're all experiencing as we read stories and hear the news about the tremendous number of deaths that are taking place around the world. And some people feel their own grief is being swallowed up in a way and consumed by just the enormity of the shared communal grief that's out there in the world right now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because this is a rather unique time. In the past, when one of us has been grieving, usually most of our friends and family, most of the people in our community, most of the people in our country, most of the people on the planet are not experiencing intense grief at the very same time. And so this is a time when we may be feeling that there's less support available to us, partly because we can't gather in person, face to face with people who might be supporting us, but also because everyone is going through something difficult right now, all at the same time. And so this really is an extraordinary time in history when we may be needing to be our own grief guides, when we may not have a big support system for our own particular grief, partly because everyone around us is a little bit overwhelmed with their feelings of grief. And we really don't have a choice about this right now. This is the reality and how things are. So it is important for us to think about this and contemplate it and figure out, how can I honor and attend to my own grief in a personal and private way and not get lost or caught up in the grief I also feel for everyone else out there in the world. I think this is a good time for us as well, even those of us who have not experienced the death of a loved one in the recent past, but have a history of our own grief and our own losses from death and dying in the past, for us to revisit our grief and remember our own loved ones at this time, because it is a profound time of ongoing grief and loss that people are experiencing. And I think it's a good time for us to revisit and remember our own losses, whether they are losses from death or other types of losses in life, loss of employment, loss of relationships, loss of a community, loss of our way of life, all of which are things everyone is dealing with right now and grieving. So while you're dealing with today's grief, also do remember the grief from your past, which is likely to be coming up anyway. And I had a suggestion. First of all, just a little analogy to think about, I guess it's a metaphor actually, to think about that. Can we hold both our own personal grief and communal grief at the same time, and a way to think of it? So this idea came to me of grief soup. So bear with me as I try to explain this. It's as if each one of us, our own personal grief that we hold and carry with us, is one ingredient. And when we come together communally to experience grief, every person brings their own unique ingredient that we can all place together inside one enormous pot. And when we each contribute from our own broken hearts, our own ingredients of our unique personal grief, we give a little bit of that into the communal pot. Then I think together we are stirring up in this pot an amazing grief soup that it's made up of all of this unique grief and pain from everyone, everywhere around the world right now. And so this shared grief soup is amazingly rich and nourishing for us also. And in exchange for giving a little bit of our own hearts, our own broken hearts, to the communal grief soup, we get some of the grief soup back that we can use to nurture ourselves. I just wanted to put that idea in your mind, that participating in communal grief doesn't detract from our own experience of personal and private grief, but it may actually support us and give us some nutrition and nourishment as we're experiencing our own grief. So one recommendation I have is to make sure that you are honoring your personal private grief by perhaps creating a grief corner in your home. Maybe it is a little table or a shelf somewhere. Maybe you make some type of altar in this area where you can place a picture of your loved one, perhaps some flowers, a candle that you can light each day. If there are other little mementos that you would like to bring along, place them on your little altar or table. And this creates for you a place that is set aside, a holy and sacred place that is set aside for your grief. And it's a daily reminder that you're honoring your grief. And again, as I said, you can do this for a loved one who has recently died that you're still feeling acute grief for, but also for a loved one who has died in the past that you've decided you would like to honor once again now as we're going through this process together. And so I suggest that you visit your grief corner or your altar at least once a day and spend a little time there doing some deep breathing, but also some contemplation and meditation or prayer as you sit for a moment and look at the picture of your loved one, light a candle, have a small personal little ritual for yourself where you honor the memory of your loved one and contemplate the pain that you're experiencing and leave aside the pain, the collective pain that everyone is experiencing right now. Simply focus on your relationship with your loved one and whatever emotions you happen to be experiencing in the moment. It doesn't have to be pain or sorrow or sadness, whatever emotion arises for you while you're spending time at your little altar or grief corner. So I would recommend that you do that every day because it becomes a habit then. And it's also shows supreme respect and care and honor for your loved one, but also for yourself, for your own feelings of grief. And it allows you a safe space every day to visit the grief and express it and to set it aside from the collective and communal grief that all of us are going through together. So begin that way by creating your personal space for grief. And again, it doesn't have to take up very much room, but just a place that you can visit every day and honor your own grief, honor your memory of your loved one. And then also, other times during the day, you may want to participate in some sort of communal ritual. And these are mostly things that are happening online, of course, since we can't really get together in person at this place. But I do know some communities are having a daily shout out for healthcare workers in their community where everyone's going outside and clapping or banging on pots and pans and shouting and yelling thank you and expressing gratitude for healthcare workers. I think that's one way of participating in a communal ritual. But you could do other things like lighting a candle in the window of your house, maybe an electric candle so you don't have to worry about it burning, and let it burn continuously in your window so that light is visible. I know some people are putting up Christmas lights in their windows and leaving those on at night as a show of solidarity for others in the community who happen to walk by or drive by. You could also post a flag in front of your house or a poster or a banner or a sign, some other way of expressing your care and concern for this collective suffering that we're all experiencing now as part of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think those are some ways that you can participate in this collective and communal ritual. You can also do things like the reading that you do. When you're reading, you can also stop for a moment and say a prayer or a blessing for all the lives that have been lost, for all the people that are also grieving right now and suffering all around the world, for all the patients who are in the hospital, for all their families who are separated from them and feeling deep care and concern for their loved ones. So each day you can have some sort of little ritual where you honor the suffering of the collective, the communal suffering. And I do believe that participating in rituals like that can help you when you go back to revisit your own personal pain. The connection that we feel to others can support us. It doesn't have to overwhelm us or overshadow our personal experience of pain, but I believe that it can be of some support to us. So that's how I'm suggesting that you give a little something to the communal grief soup that we're making, and hopefully you will be nurtured in that process so that you can go back each day to your personal grief ritual and feel more nourished and more supported while you're carrying out that ritual alone and during a time when you may not have the type of support from friends and family that you would have in a different time in history. So as a prompt for journaling this week, I would like us to journal about grief, journal a bit about our own personal grief that we're experiencing right now, and any past grief that we may be revisiting. And so write a bit about that process and what it has been like. And perhaps you can write a prayer or a blessing or a poem or a paragraph or something about your own grief that you can utilize during your little grief rituals at your altar or grief corner each day. Don't work too hard at that. Allow it to come up in you. If there's something that needs to be said that you might be able to repeat each day as part of your grief ritual in your grief corner. So I just wanted to offer you those thoughts Always, I'm hoping that whatever I bring to you is helpful to you as we go through this process together. This is a historic time. It's undoubtedly something we will never forget. It is going to be such a marker in our lives, and a marker that everyone else on the planet is experiencing along with us at this time. Completely unprecedented. Something all of us who are alive right now will be able to refer to one day, and everyone else who was here at this time will remember it and be able to tell stories about it. So take care of your own hearts. Love yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. And then allow that kindness and gentleness to reflect out to the rest of the world. Share the love that you are gathering in your own broken heart. Remember, I'll be back on Friday with another story for Love Over Fear, and again on Monday with another episode of the podcast. Sending you all my love, and remember that we're here for love. So face your fear. Be ready for whatever is going to come tomorrow, which we don't really know right now, and love each and every moment of your life. Bye-bye.